In this video, more great birds for our big ear challenge, lots of rain and Kayleigh's favourite bird. Hey folks, welcome back, and this birding adventure starts off with a mad rush into Cheshire. Hey folks, I'm out of breath because I'm rushing. Today, all day so far, and hopefully now, there's been a Woodchat Shrike here. I'm near Darbury, not far from Runcorn. I've had people messaging me saying, "You're going for it?" and I've been in work. And then after work, Kayleigh's car's been in the garage, so we had to go and collect that. And now it's about 6:30. I'm really hoping it's still stick with me, see if I find it. As I parked up, I bumped into a fellow birder, Louis, who gave me vague directions as to where I might find, hopefully, the Woodchat Shrike. This route took me down a path with some farmland on each side. En route, seeing a buzzard sat on the top of a hay bale, and further along, a whitethroat moving through the bushes. I soon came to a rail crossing where, after waiting for a train to go past, I crossed and climbed the bank onto the canal towpath. It was along the canal here today that a Woodchat Shrike had been showing, apparently extremely well. A friend and fellow birder Ashley had been sending me photos whilst I was at work, trying to make me jealous, and although it was pretty late, I was hoping it was still present. And thankfully, when I arrived, it was. It was initially sat on the top edge of a bush on the opposite side of the canal. But almost as soon as I arrived, it flew down into the vegetation, but not for long. It was soon refound perching on the back of the bush, and although not completely visible, there was a kind of little window in the vegetation, so if you were stood at the right angle you could get a reasonable view of this wonderful shrike. Myself and the other birders present watched it for quite a while, whilst it stayed in the same position. But soon it must have got hungry, as it started hunting bees. Every so often it'd fly off its perch into the vegetation beneath it, and then come up sometimes with a bee and sometimes not. At one point though, it caught one and sat quite out in the open, giving everyone present some amazing views of this southern European visitor. This species is Europe's smallest shrike, and has quite a large population throughout southern Europe, but despite this population is declining, and in some countries including France, Poland and Switzerland, this species is now considered threatened. But whilst it still has a large remaining population in some areas, the Woodchat Shrike on a world scale is still considered least concern. And for any of you that watched our videos from our recent trip to Lesvos, they're pretty numerous there. So, as many regular viewers know, we have featured the Woodchat Shrike in recent videos. Not only on our Lesvos trip, but soon after, Kayleigh did a little information video on shrikes, which included this wonderful species, that also happens to be her favourite bird. So, she may be just a bit jealous I got these kind of views. Regardless, this is a species we've only seen in the UK once, and that was a couple of years ago in Lincolnshire. That bird was a female, so to now get the male Woodchat Shrike so close to home is just unreal. After watching the shrike for quite a while, it was slowly starting to get dark, so time to head home. This had been quite an evening walk. Well folks, that was quite something. When I arrived it was in the top of the tree, a little bit silhouetted, then it moved kind of to the back of the tree. But you could still see it through the foliage, and then it went and caught a bee and ate it, which was just amazing. Like, we've seen a few of these in Greece, but there's nothing quite like seeing birds like this in the UK. That's amazing. I'm the first male of the species I've seen here. Kayleigh's going to be gutted. That's her favourite bird, but that was really, really good. It was so good that a few days later after work, I headed back to try and get better views. But this time, it wasn't in its usual spot. Luckily though, another birder present took a walk and found it in a field next to the railway track. And this time the views were even better.
The shrike spent almost all of its time out in the open, on the edges of a small tree. It would do some hunting, flying off, catching insects and returning, but would almost always land on outlying branches, giving just stunning views of this amazing shrike. And it was reasonably confiding, not seeming too bothered by birders that were reasonably close. This time I stuck around a bit longer than on my previous visit, feeling quite privileged to spend time with such an amazing bird so close to home. It was actually reasonably difficult to leave. But time had run out, and regrettably once again Kayleigh was unavailable to join me, so missed out on these views of her favourite bird. Hopefully we can make amends later in the video. A few days later I travelled into North Wales with a few target species in mind.
Hey folks, I'm at Llynbrennig in North Wales, hopefully coming to see an amazing and very special bird of prey, the Osprey. They have a breeding pair here that I'm hopefully going to get a sight of. I've also just heard another bird for the year list, but I haven't found it yet. That's redpoll. I'm going to look for that first on the way, so stick with me.
Although I heard the redpoll a couple of times, I couldn't track one down, so headed on the path towards the Osprey lookout. This lookout is a little cabin with a deck outside, and on the deck there's a few scopes you can look through over to the distant Osprey nesting platform. And inside the cabin there's a screen with a live feed from the Osprey nest, so people can get a little bit of a closer look. From the decking I could see the ospreys, but they were extremely distant. Regardless, it was enough to tick them off the year list. This species on a world scale is very widespread. In fact, it's the second most widespread raptor in the world, with only the peregrine falcon beating it. And the birds that come to the UK to breed migrate to Africa in the winter. One of the wardens here told me that ospreys are extremely loyal to their breeding grounds, returning each year, and also to their wintering grounds too. I did go in the cabin and got some footage from the live feed, although they were having trouble that day with the internet, so the feed was a bit glitchy. So I've included a little less glitchy footage from our visit last year. Regardless of the technical issues, seeing the birds on the screen gave me far better views of these wonderful fish-eating predators. Whilst chatting to one of the wardens here, I was told there's a hide that's much nearer the nest platform, specifically for photography, but unfortunately on the day I visited it wasn't open. I may return another time to get better footage, but ultimately we got the Osprey off of our year list, and what amazing birds they are.
Hey folks, I saw the ospreys at a distance, but luckily they've got a live feed screen, so I took some footage of that, although it was glitchy because they've got internet problems. But regardless, you can see how amazing these birds of prey are. Now I'm going to try and get some footage of the redpoll that I heard on the way up.
I walked on the path back towards the visitor centre where I'd heard the redpolls on the way to the Osprey lookout, looking in any bushes and trees for any movement and listening out for the redpoll's call. There were plenty of other birds actively feeding and calling. I heard chaffinches, goldfinches and lots of siskin. I even heard willow tit, a very rare bird in the UK, which we saw here earlier in the year. Eventually I heard the sound I was listening for, the redpoll, and finally tracked it down, sat on a telegraph wire singing. It didn't stay for long as it flew off towards the visitors centre. So that's the direction I went, hoping for better views. I got back to the visitors centre, treated myself to an ice cream and sat on a bench that looked over some bird feeders that were extremely active with birds. And with this kind of traffic coming back into, I was hoping that it'd only be a matter of time before I got some lovely views of the bird I was looking for. The most numerous birds coming to these bird feeders by far were goldfinches and siskins. There was loads of them, but it didn't take long until I got a view of my target species, the redpoll. Now, if I was looking for this bird early last year, I would have been calling it the lesser redpoll, as there's a few subspecies that up to early last year were recognised as separate species, like the mealy redpoll or common redpoll and the Arctic redpoll. But recently these have been clumped into a single species, which isn't good for birders like us who want to count as many species as possible. Well, never mind. It was time now though to move on to another target species.
After Clynbrennog, I thought I'd take a trip to Holyhead, to the harbour, for one specific species that I'm trying to find, the black guillemot. The weather's been pretty horrific on the way, it's been hammering it down, but it's eased off now, so I'm walking down to where I'm hoping to find them. Let's see if we can.
I'd parked in a lay-by and headed down the street towards Holyhead Fish Harbour. This, as the name suggests, is a small fishing harbour set aside from the main harbour. And today it was very quiet. I seemed to be the only person there when I arrived. Maybe it was the bad weather coming in, putting people off doing any fishing. Regardless, I walked towards the harbour wall, spotting en route a herring gull that was missing a foot and a few mollards too. As I got further down the harbour, I noticed a shape on the sea in the distance.
Hey folks, I've found one. It's not close in, it's reasonably far out and it's having a preen. But that, I would say, is a success. It's actually coming closer to me on the tide. In fact, there's another one, I think.
There was indeed more than one bird present. At this point, I spotted three. Two that were together and one that was a little further in the distance. But one bird kept diving under and coming a little closer, giving me increasingly better views of this wonderful bird. This species is a resident in the UK, breeding on the coasts of Ireland, Scotland, the Isle of Man, and here in Holyhead. This being about the southernmost extent of its global range, with the majority of its population breeding in the Arctic Circle. Although most of these birds are resident all year round, some of the birds that breed higher in the Arctic Circle do move south in winter. As I watched these birds drift further away towards the other entrance of the harbour, I started noticing some of the other birds around me, including many noisy oyster catchers that seemed to be nesting on the other side of the harbour, and a few gulls, including herring gulls, and directly opposite me on the harbour wall, a pair of very noisy greater blackback gulls, the world's biggest gull species. In the harbour near me there was a cormorant fishing, and I also noticed a seal that was coming up for air. Although I was enjoying watching all this wildlife around me, the rain started coming in, and I was pretty satisfied that I'd seen my target species, so I headed back down the edge of the fish harbour, but stopped as I noticed something that was going to delay me for a bit longer. I noticed one of the black guillemots had come into the fish harbour to feed. It was really close, right under my feet. And although the rain was coming down and I was getting wet through, I couldn't pass up getting these kind of views of this amazing species. I followed it around the harbour wall as it dived and then came up again, at one point catching some kind of flatfish, which it spent a couple of minutes trying to get in the right position to swallow, of which it struggled for a bit. Eventually it managed it and then dived under again to catch more. Watching this species at such close quarters was quite a privilege, and I could have continued to watch it as it didn't seem to be going anywhere, pretty happily feeding around the harbour wall. But unfortunately I was wet and cold, so headed back up the path towards the car. Absolutely over the moon with this close encounter.
Hey folks, it's raining again, but that was pretty successful. After watching the 3 or 4 black guillemots like from the harbour at a distance, I went to turn back because of the rain, and there was a black guillemot fishing in the harbour, which just gave me some stunning views. What a cool bird that is. That was amazing.
A few days later, we were back in Darbury.
Hey folks,
Going after a shrike.
we're going after a shrike. The shrike I saw at the start of the video, Kayleigh's insisted it's her turn as it's her favourite bird, so let's hope it's here. It's been here for a couple of days. It has been reported today, so fingers crossed. Stick with us, it's raining though.
Despite the weather, we took the same route I took a few days before, through the fields, over the railway track, and down the canal bank, towards where Kayleigh was really hoping the Woodchat Shrike was going to be. When we arrived though, it wasn't showing. And although it had been showing recently, it wasn't where I saw it the other day. It had gone down to some bushes near the railway line. Regardless, we were pretty confident that it would show, and soon this persistence paid off, as the shrike appeared in the front of a bush, giving us clear but distant views. We stood with a group of birders and watched the shrike hunting from the bush and some overhead wires near the railway track. Occasionally, when a train went past, the shrike would be temporarily spooked and disappear off for a few moments, only to return to the bushes again. At one point though, the shrike disappeared for a while. So we waited, hoping it'd show again, chatting to some of the other birders present. Eventually, we decided we were going to call it a day, until somebody spotted the shrike in the canal side bush that I'd seen it on my first visit. We saw it fly across the canal, then back into the bush, but couldn't find it. Soon though, one of the other birders, who was looking at it from a different angle, noticed the shrike sat on a twig behind the bush. He spotted it and summoned us all over, giving us amazing views of this hunter. Although it didn't stay on the twig for long, it did give us some fantastic views, and hopefully for Kayleigh made up for me going twice and seeing it without her. I know we've featured this bird a lot in this video, but no apologies, as this is a fantastic species to see in this country, and of course Kayleigh's favourite. As we were about to leave, the shrike had moved position to the edge of a pylon behind the bush and started hunting from there.
We got it.
We got it. It was a bit distant at the start. It was on some telegraph wires above a train line, and then it flew across to the same bush I saw it the other day. And I stood on a twig at one point. We got great views. It was amazing.
We've now had a billy and a girl.
Yeah, we've done well. Well, that's a great way to end the video. Thanks so much for watching. Please like,
Please subscribe.
and please press the notification bell. See you next time.
Bye.